but it's absolutely legitimate. Is the coffee actually ready now?
It's actually ready and it's actually good.
Anybody that, well, that's the switch by itself because I made it, guys. But anybody that wants coffee, please feel free to jump over there. So I hope that answers part of your question. Any other questions on sewer? This is only sanitary. We are coming to drainage and stormwater. I told you 2 slides, it's only 1. Okay. It appears to us, based on the research that we've done, that the drainage and stormwater issue is related directly to streets. Now, there is an overriding issue here called, is it MS4? I'm not an expert on this, but there is a stormwater utility thing that US EPA has, and it has to do with the city of Indianapolis. The city of Indianapolis owes or is supposed to spend about $1 billion separating sanitary waste from combined waste. I believe Beech Grove is fundamentally done with that separation. Is that correct, Tim? Okay. Beech Grove has done what it's supposed to do, but there are still big sewers that you and I could walk into on White River that when a rain comes down, the flow surges and combined sewage goes into the White River. A long time ago, before I had gray hair, they were going to have a skiing event on White River, and it couldn't happen because there was so much pollution in the White River. They had a national ski competition or something, and they moved it to some lake up by Castleton instead. Anyway, that combined sewer overflow, also CSO, has been a topic for Indianapolis, and that I think is one of the issues that has to do with this $300,000+ that the 2 cities are arguing over in this. But what we're finding as far as Beech Grove goes, it appears that the main issue is that in some areas, too many areas, let's say, the streets have been repaved by laying more pavement on top so often that the drainage attributes of the streets don't function anymore. Same thing goes for the alleys in a lot of cases, that they have laid this stuff over and you are no different than a whole lot of neighborhoods in Indianapolis. In fact, that's a good place to put this because Beech Grove really is simply the size of one of the larger neighborhoods in Indianapolis. And if you noticed, Indianapolis recently made target neighborhoods, it's been in the newspaper, target neighborhoods. There were 8, I think, in the city of Indianapolis. But the city of Indianapolis treats you as they should, as a totally separate municipality that solve your own problems. In effect, you are the same size as a neighborhood, but you have your own local government. So the idea is that Indianapolis is saying you need to solve your own problems here. What has happened over the years has been simply that we keep laying pavement on top of pavement. It's a very common thing, but it comes to a point where you have to take all that pavement out, you have to reset the drainage, and you have to build it from the ground up, or from under the ground up. That means resetting the catch basins. That means unplugging the catch basins from 50 years worth of sand and gravel. And some of them, I don't think in your case, but I've actually seen cities where they paved over the catch basins. They paved over the manhole covers to get to the sewers, so because they had X number of dollars to spend and they wanted to get as many streets paved as they could. You guys haven't done some of those silly things. But it means when you carve all that off, it means taking the manhole, chopping the top section off, taking sections out in order to lower the manhole cover so it doesn't stick this high up into the street. There's a lot of work that has to get done. Normal age deterioration, age-time deterioration is also taking place. And the recommendation is down at the bottom. I thought I had bolded that, but I obviously didn't. Is to rebuild neighborhood streets. Now, those folks that were here on Thursday heard about the fact that there is, for every square foot, we are going to, by the end of this process, be able to show you for every square foot of new industrial and commercial development that we can make happen within these TIF areas can be used to do specific things in specific neighborhoods. Ray, I promise, if you come back, I will give you a front row seat and I'll bring the donuts over to you myself. But we're going to try to create a game situation that helps people to educate people on how TIF works, how tax increment financing works, and how these revenue streams work. In 92 counties in Indiana, in 91 of them, this revenue system would be totally foreign. You might as well be talking Chinese. In Unigov, this system is all unique, and since the legislature, by and large doesn't come from Indianapolis, you have an issue here that this is one county's problem, and we've got to figure out a way to explain to folks how it works here, because what happens in Johnson County isn't what happens here. What we are trying to link, as I said on Thursday, new commercial industrial development directly with improvements to your neighborhood. That's the long-term goal we've got. If the streets aren't working correctly from the drainage standpoint, the worst case scenario that we've seen, there are a couple of places here where it looks like it's happening. In Bloomington, for example, there are places where the street's been built up, the crown of the street is above the curb height, even if they do manage to create a crown that comes down and there is a catch basin area. What happens in Bloomington is that the sidewalks flood, because the second lowest thing is the sidewalk. So if the street catch basin can't carry it away, then students are walking down the street and it's running in whatever direction, if you're going uphill or downhill. The water's always running downhill. Depends if you're, never mind. We're talking about a long-term neighborhood street reconstruction program. And we believe that the secondary benefit of that, besides fixing the drainage, would be to help residential property values. Now, we're going to have in the residential part of the workshop, we're going to have a realtors roundtable. And one of the things that we're going to get from those guys, we'll talk to them ahead of time to find out what pieces of information that they want. But what I want those private individual business realtors to be able to say is, these are the 5 things that most affect residential property values. And then I want to be able to then show them what Beech Grove is doing and then have their critique about how much of that works and how much of it doesn't, or how it should be fixed, if that makes sense. Now, that's not for today, but that's for the next one. What is that, Thursday? Coming up? Okay. All right. Street improvements coupled with increased inspection and code enforcement is linked to the effort to enhance residential property values. Somebody came to me the other day and said, we had this issue with our neighbors, and they let stuff pile up in their junk pile up in their street. Nobody likes going to the neighbors and saying, you got to clean it up. But we have a thing that we talked about in the first session back in March. It's called Rule of 9. If you envision yourself as the center of a 3x3 grid, there are 8 people that are directly affected by what you do on your property. If you do good things, they benefit. If you do bad things, they don't benefit. That means that it doesn't take very many properties to start wrecking property values for a whole neighborhood. In addition, we have the issue of foreclosures, and the foreclosure research says that every foreclosure on your street cuts your property value by 1 to 2%. So if you happen to be in a neighborhood that gets hit hard by foreclosure, you could lose $25,000 or $30,000 in the course of a year. And we're trying to get to that issue as well. The street reconstruction is also then coupled with sidewalks and paths. Ray's been working with Sam Merle to try to get sidewalks by the school, by the middle school, up street, Buffalo Street. The street starts with
and Quay one. And it's an ongoing project.
Oh yeah. We think that this multimodal study, it has the recommendations for what needs to go in there when the streets are reconstructed. But since you have to tear them all apart, since you have to rip them all the way down to the bedding and relay new gravel in the bottom and redo the drainage, it's the perfect time it's the least cost alternative to add in whatever you've got to add in to make the sidewalks walkable, to make them bikeable. And every street, as I said, is in that multimodal study. So what you would see then, if our comprehensive redevelopment plan is successful, is that over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, here's what's going to happen to each street in town. And what we would hope to then give to the residential real estate guys is, this is the list, this is what's supposed to happen on these streets, put this with the information when you go to sell that house, when you go to sell a house on these streets. Does that make sense? Anybody got any questions? Okay. There's a thing that Tom Haywood invented. Tom was the original president of the Redevelopment Commission. He called it Poster Children for Urban Blight. We've kind of taken that poster child thing and kind of expanded it. But we think that our research suggests that poster child number one for drainage is Main Street. Here's what we come up with, and I submit this to you for your comment. For 50 years, Main Street was a dead end, or almost 50 years. Once they cut it off, a lot of weird things started to happen. That's what happens under this Unigov format, that it got passed, but it wasn't very well thought out. And it needed to be amended, but nobody ever bothered to get around to doing it. Traffic had to find ways to avoid Main Street. People said the other day that more traffic is on Churchman and on Albany than on Main. That's absolutely true. Part of the reason was because Main Street was a dead end. Part of the reason was because those were the way the thoroughfares were made to start with. But we're going to try to take all of those and make them into positives. The owners that have suffered for these last 50 years have gotten, they have responded to exactly what the environment is that's there. They've done exactly what they had to do. But they're going to have to change some of the thinking too and start to look at things in slightly different ways, and we talked about some of that. We have an owner over there that's starting to think of things in different ways, and she said some pretty cool things at the meeting the other night. But I believe that what will happen will be Main Street, people will find their way back to Main Street over time because now it's open, now it's marked, now there's a stoplight that lets you turn into it. The stoplight, green, to get you an idea of how much better things are, people are now saying the stoplight the arrow isn't green long enough to get very many cars in there. You know what, that's a lot easier problem to fix than the one that was there 2 years ago. Yes, sir?
I got a question for you. You've lost me. Can you expand on how Main Street is a dead end?
It was a dead end.
Well,
There was a wall there.
but wasn't there stoplights where you could turn on down Main Street? I mean, the wall got opened up. At one time it was a dead end, but they opened the wall.
Well, I mean, but after that, they opened the wall after 25 or 30 years of it being that way, and people got used to traveling around it. So the issue is, I mean, why would I get on a dead-end street? Why would I locate a business on a dead-end street? Most retail businesses are dependent, and someone in the thing, there was another lady named Susie, I think, that said that she has no walk-in traffic on her business.
I don't either.
You don't either?
No.
That's these people are trying to suffer through retail, doing retail, and they've learned to live without walk-in traffic. With Main Street beginning to function properly, that walk-in traffic should begin to increase. And it's not we're not saying that it's anybody's fault. I'm not blaming it on, well, I am blaming it on the HUD administration. If you want it laid out in simple facts, that should never have happened. But Bill's transportation engineers said that's the easiest way for us to do it, and he didn't care. And nobody was down here saying, the choice that was given to Elton was, which one do you want closed, Main Street or Albany? And there was more traffic on Albany even then. It wasn't Elton's fault either. He just wasn't given other alternatives. If it would have been me, I'd have been hiring the best attorney I could have found and said, you're going to find a way to get us connected. But that's all hindsight, and it's not really fair. I think what I'm trying to say here is that for years, Main Street was a dead end. You could get out on Main Street in recent years, but until the wall was opened up, until there was a major intersection put in, people didn't know where it was. And people in Beech Grove knew it better than other people, but folks zooming down Emerson didn't know or didn't care. And that's 35,000 cars a day of potential retail customers, and if you only capture 1% of them, that's 350 people on Main Street. That's 35 transactions under really, really conservative numbers. 35 bacon, biscuits and gravy with eggs at the Morning Glory, 35 dozen roses, 35, you sell baskets and stuff, right?
Gourmet gift baskets.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. Does that answer your question?
So you're just saying the perception of Main Street being a dead end, basically?
No, it was physically a dead end for a long time, and now it's still perceived as such, but yes, you're right. I mean, it was, both sides of that are true. Yes, sir.
Where are you going to park the cars? I mean, right now, when you go down there, you just go down to Meat Market before they ended up having their own parking lot. If you went down there at a busy time, if the busy time was more than 5 people, you didn't have any place to park. I mean, it'd be nice to open it up, but you're gonna, where are you going to park all the cars? And are they gonna be convenient enough that the people will be willing to park there and go shopping? you know, you have to make it convenient both ways.
I don't disagree with you.
I won't go down there if I have to park 3 blocks to walk down Main Street. You know, I just won't do it.
I understand. And on the other hand, when I go down there, the new meat market, I didn't really realize there was a meat market until the new one was opened. So, I don't live here. So, what I have found, and I've told this to other folks, the best breakfasts in Marion County are sold in her place. The best roast beef sandwich that I think in Marion County is sold at his place. And I buy $50 worth of meat every time I go by the Beach Grove Meat Market. And there is a meat market in Carmel that's 2 miles away from me that I don't think is, I mean, I think this one's every bit as good. But when I do it, I'm going to be in one place on Main Street, maybe down at the City Hall, and I'll walk all the way down to the meat market or all the way down to Terry's place. So we have different ways of using it. It's not saying that you're the only one, but people have said, in the survey, it said that it's easy, the question was, it's easy to find parking on Main Street, and 56.6% of the people said it was easy. But what they also said was, it depends on where you're talking about. Now, let me bring all this back to what I think is the good news. I would love for the problem on Main Street to come down to parking, because right now it's not having enough customers. When I get to the point where I got to have parking, that means I've got the customers there, and we'll figure out a way to get them to park. Do you not disagree?
What I disagree with is, it's fine, we need to open Beach Grove Main Street. We need to bring the people in. But that's fine and dandy when you bring them in, but how long are you going to keep them if you don't plan far enough ahead to where are you going to park them when they come? They will come. But if they will only come for a certain length of time, and if they have problem parking,
Well, let me tell you,
it defeats its purpose, is what I'm saying. We're in the long term, when Beach Grove Main Street really gets going, we're in the long term when you plan on parking all these extra people that are going to be walking around down there.
well, you got me in a, I don't want to go forward. I could give you, I could give you some ideas of mine. The problem with those ideas is that they would involve somebody's private property, and I don't want to go and start making those kinds of things. Here's the issue. There is more parking in Beach Grove on Main Street than there is in Broad Ripple. Now, I've got a situation in Broad Ripple where I'll be willing to bet that she or Susie would be happy to trade places with the florist in Broad Ripple, or the person, I don't know, is there a person in Broad Ripple that does gift baskets?
I hope not.
But here's the point. Once you get to a certain quality of development, the parking people, the customers will move around those issues. I believe that we can come up with a parking plan. I believe that we have 4 or 5 years to get to the client at that level to prove that it's necessary. I believe that there will be somebody along the way that will say, you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore. I'm too old. I want to be out of this business. Why don't you guys, the Redevelopment Commission, buy my building and tear it down for parking? But if I say, we're going to tear down your building for parking, I've got myself in a jam, and I'd rather have you for 4 more years. Okay? Yes?
I'd just like to say, the Main Street thrived for years and years with the parking that they have right now. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is a good point. I think there's, some other things we could get more parking, but it did thrive for years, with a lot more business, and that is, that's not there now.
Right. There's another aspect to this, too. If you get people, not necessarily like me, I wouldn't wish myself on anybody, but if you get people that start walking around, we were talking about having more, in the commercial development stuff, talking about having more office buildings along Emerson and along Main Street. If one person said, was it you, Tim, that said that if you get on, you can go over and get a sandwich at the deli, but there's no place to sit, because if they have seating, they've got to put in a bathroom, and there's no really place to put in a bathroom. But you can go out on the street and sit and eat your sandwich. My wife, when I brought back, the first time I brought back a beef tenderloin, and we roasted it out on the spit and the grill, and she was saying, wouldn't it be cool if you had a place where you could actually walk to that place, get the beef tenderloin, go to a bakery and get fresh bread, fresh rolls, come back down after, walk back down after dinner and have an ice cream cone. I think that's the kind of direction that people are starting to think about here. You know, it may be that instead of just having coffee, where most of the businesses in the morning, you have coffee and you have lunch sandwiches. Even Starbucks has figured this out, and they don't have a kitchen in there. They ship in these sandwiches, and I don't know about you, but I'm not eating the Starbucks sandwiches. They're not the hot breakfast ones I'm talking about. But in the evening, then, the ice cream idea, that sort of stuff. What is the name of the place? Ritter's Custard. They have elaborate buildings that are very expensive and very nice looking. They're only open like 8 months out of the year. They just shut down during the winter. I'd like to have that, you know, something more like a Maggie Moo's or something that's open all year round. But that's just kind of the dreaming that we're going through. Okay. There is a place, I think it's the the weightlifting place on Main Street. It has sandbags. Leo's? Okay, thanks. That has sandbags in front of it. That's got to go. You've got a problem where you had to actually put a speed bump in order to get the alley to keep from draining underneath this building. We've got to get the Main Street issue, the alleys north and south of Main Street have to be reworked. And I really believe that that needs to happen as a premise to making Main Street work in general. And I think you said the other day that the estimated cost of Main Street is like $4.5 million, something like that. That's where and we've got to go. We're in for a grant at the current time. It's an 80-20 match. Probably Ray has a problem a little bit with grants because, you know, ultimately we end up paying for the grants. You know, it comes out of our pockets. At the same time, I'm not all that unhappy about taking a piece of Indianapolis's money for once. So, you know, it's just my view. But everybody gets to have a different. That infrastructure on Main Street is a critical thing to the park. I'm sorry. We're then going, this was not in our paradigm when we first started, but when we got to the point of no one understanding the drainage of the alleys, drainage of the streets, it became clear that the alleys for those places that have it are also that way. That there are places where you can literally go along and you can see that the alley surface is 3 or 4 inches above the threshold of the garage, which means that, you know, whatever's in that garage better not be on the floor. And that part of it became part of our group too, or part of our discussion too. So, any questions about any of this? Is there anybody that thinks that has anything to offer, to add to this? No?